Welcome to Normal Ireland Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm honoured, really honoured to be joined by independent journalist Barry Malone. Barry, how are you this evening?
Hi, Curtis. I'm good. Nice to be with you. And congratulations on Turn Left. It's great. I first became aware of you guys when you got the big scoop with my friend Sangeeta Maiska after she was
Yes.
fired from LBC. So, yeah, that was great. And yeah, congratulations on everything you're doing. It's really cool to see.
Honestly, thank you so much, and it means a lot coming from you. But that was it was an excellent interview with our own Ben McLean, who spoke to Sangeeta, and she's a
Yeah, yeah,
fantastic
yeah.
journalist,
No, she's
absolutely
amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah. And, what happened to her was absolutely awful. And yeah.
I think she's better off out of LBC. She can be more honest, shall we
Yeah.
say?
And she's doing some cool stuff for Middle East Eye now, I've noticed. So, yeah, more power to her.
We'll definitely be getting her back on, but tonight's all about tonight's show. This is what we've got coming up for you. Landlords and pensioners face a tax increase from Labour. The Greens beat Labour and the Tories in a recent poll. Matt Goodwin gets reality check on Question Time, and Trump plans for regime change in Venezuela. Now, you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. But on to our first story. Rachel Reeves is looking to increase taxes on pensioners and landlords. The Chancellor is rumoured to be proposing a 2p increase in income tax while cutting 2p from national insurance. Rachel Reeves has been urged to take 2p off the rate of employee national insurance and add it to income tax in her autumn budget to raise billions of pounds while protecting workers' pay packets. Putting forward plans to raise up to 30 billion, the influential Resolution Foundation think tank called on the Chancellor to level the playing field on how different forms of income are taxed. So the purpose of this policy is to essentially even things up, right? You reduce taxes for workers and increase it for pensioners and landlords. So how does it work? Well, it works like this. Income tax applies to a wider group of taxpayers than employee national insurance, including pensioners, landlords, and self-employed people. Income tax is devolved in Scotland and Wales, but the think tank said it would expect them to follow the approach taken in England and Northern Ireland. Now, this sounds like a reasonable policy. Look, it's not dramatic, it's not transformational, but I think it's pretty sound. But not all are happy. The Daily Mail ran a headline claiming it would cripple the economy and asked why they don't just punish poor people instead. But Labour faces a big problem. Their manifesto promised not to increase taxes on working people. And I mean, look, this policy isn't bad. I mean, they're technically, increasing income taxes, but they're sort of reducing it, in another way. But technically, according to their manifesto, it does break their pledge, which they've politically painted themselves into a corner. But you know what? It was entirely predictable. We said before the election that Labour saying no to tax rises would be a political disaster. They should have pledged to increase taxes on the rich, or even better, a wealth tax. Barry, taxing landlords more, I think, is a welcome move, but this would be manifesto breaking. How do you think people will perceive this policy?
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of I think, it's not a terrible policy. And in a way, it's clever, right? But, perhaps it's just a bit too clever by halves because as you say, they painted themselves into a corner with this pledge not to increase income tax. And now they're going to do that. And they're giving their opponents a clear attack line. Look, it's great to see like landlords taxed more. This is great. But when they go out to the public and try to explain this policy, I actually think that they're going to struggle to explain it. I can imagine what they're going to say. They're going to say, okay, we've increased income tax, but not on workers. We haven't, there's going to be no material change for workers. But the attacks are already coming in and they're disingenuous, right? I saw the editor of the Sunday Telegraph did a video today and he talked about the increase on income tax. He said that they were breaking their election pledges for the umpteenth time. He said that it was going to be really detrimental to the economy. And in his entire video, he never mentioned the national insurance aspect. So it was just a completely disingenuous video. I see Zia Youssef is already on the attack with it. And I just think good luck to Labour trying to explain to the electorate in the face of all that criticism that things will effectively stay the same for workers. I think all people are going to take away is that there's been an increase in income tax. And it just makes me think, again, I don't think it's a terrible policy, but it's just a bit too clever by halves. And it makes me think yet again that this government just isn't very good at politics. Like, they have to reduce the deficit. There's no doubt about that. But they seem to come up with ways to do that that are almost political suicide every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that you said they're being too clever. And that's, I think, almost the heart of the issue. I mean, first of all, I don't think the Labour Party have much of the policies behind them, but they're so bad at politics. And that if you're going to tell the nation, look, there's going to be tax rises, come out strong and bold and say, look, we're going to tax the wealthy, we're going to tax wealth. That makes a statement, because I think we understand, and especially, you know, through your work in journalism, politics is seen through the lens of narratives and stories, unfortunately not so much policy. So you kind of want to make sure that your policies are reflective of a broader narrative and a broader story. Nitpicking at certain taxes, I don't think excites people, and it opens you for attacks from the right.
Yeah, you're right.
Just come out and be strong.
You need a story. You absolutely need
Mm.
a story. And Labour, ever since they've come into power, this government doesn't have compelling stories to tell. And, you know, you're talking about a wealth tax. And, you know, we have Zach Polanski out there who's talking about a wealth tax and is making real hay out of that. And Labour have this, you know, I think it was an actually unexpected attack that they have from their left flank, or unexpected threat that they have from their left flank. And what Zach Polanski has proven is that talking about taxing wealth, not work, it's a popular policy. And you're right, quite often in this country, we don't talk about policy in the media. And I actually think Zach Polanski has forced policy into the conversation. And yet Labour keep coming up with these absolutely terrible policies from the point of view of not only selling them to the electorate, but even explaining them to the electorate. It's like I saw someone say today, I can't remember who it was, but like, good luck with that on the doorsteps. You know, I think that's true.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I love talking about taxes. I do want to continue this conversation, but we have 4 stories, so I am going to move on. But you mentioned Zach Polanski, so I guess it's kind of relevant. We can talk about the Green Party. So the Greens continue to break records, and this time the party has managed to move above both the Labour Party and the Tories for the first time in a recent poll. Find Out Now puts the Greens second place on 17%, with the Conservatives and Labour behind on 16%. Of course, Reform is still far ahead with 32%. Now, these are the list of seats the Greens would win. 47 seats, all gained from Labour, bar one. They would win Leicester East, which is currently held by the Conservatives. Notable figures who would lose their seats include David Lammy, who represents Tottenham. I don't think any of us would miss David Lammy. Also, Darren Jones from Bristol Northwest. We've got Hilary Benn, Lucy Powell, Clive Lewis, who's, you know, sort of on the left. Nadia Whittam, who is on the left, or whatever's left of the Labour left. Lots of lefts there. Stella Creasy would lose a Walthamstow. I'd be very happy with that. And the big one, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who represents Holborn and St Pancras. Look, let's be realistic here. Find Out Now do overplay so-called outside parties. Therefore, the Greens and Reform tend to overperform than usual. But the point here is trajectory. This is the second time that the Greens are polled at 17%. And they polled 15% with YouGov, who are, by the way, a well-respected pollster. So the main takeaway is that the two main parties, Labour and the Conservatives, are collapsing. Now, the media, as you know, isn't sympathetic to the left and for years ignores the Green Party, but they can do so no longer. Now, Sir John Curtis appeared on the Guardian podcast and explained the centre ground has collapsed.
If we take the opinion polls at the moment, they suggest that collectively Labour and the Conservatives command the support of just 37% of those with a vote intention. In the case of Labour, the 19% is undoubtedly an all-time record low. In the case of the Conservatives, we could have an interesting debate as to whether their current 18% is worse than or simply as bad as that under Theresa May in May 2019. but certainly collectively, the two parties have never previously been so low at the same time. In other words, we've now, for the first time in opinion polls, got fewer than 2 in 5 people saying that they would vote for those two parties. Of course, this comes off the back of the fact that at the general election last year, less than 3 in 5 people voted for those two parties. The 2024 election did, frankly, quite clearly open up the question as to what was the future of our two-party system. It's just that question is now clearly even more pressing 16 months on from the last general election. The House of Commons tells you nothing about what actually happened in the general election so far as the electorate is concerned. The crucial figure is not the majority of 400 odds. It is that Labour got just 35% of the vote in Great Britain, 34% inside the United Kingdom. That is the lowest share of the vote ever won by any government that then went on to secure a parliamentary majority. It just managed to beat the 36% that was sufficient for Tony Blair to retain a majority back in 2005. It was a low share of the vote that went for a party that people didn't know what they stood for and backed by a leader.
I think we spelt John Curtis's name wrong. We'll fix that in post. I do always enjoy, though, as much as I really respect John Curtis, hearing people within the establishment say things that we've been saying for years, right? But the rise of other parties have been a long time coming. The general election of 2024 was, of course, not a huge victory for Labour, despite the amount of seats they got. Barry, apart from Jeremy Corbyn's Labour leadership between 2015 and 2019, do you think that the future of politics will be a genuine choice between the left wing and the right wing?
Hey, before I get to that, are you in Walthamstow? Because I'm sitting in Walthamstow right now.
Wow,
you said
interesting.
you were happy about Walthamstow. And I think the last election out, which, Walthamstow is one of the safest seats in the country for a long time. And the Greens, without even campaigning here, barely got more than 9,000 votes and really put a dent in Stella Creasy's majority. So, from my own constituency.
You must be very excited.
Well, I think there's a real chance of unseating
Yeah.
her. I really do. And those statistics that you just showed are, they must be so heartening for the Green Party. But yes, on the question that you asked me, wouldn't it be great to have a choice between different types of politics? Okay, I'm not delighted that right now one of those is a far right party effectively that has one issue, which is anti-immigration. But to have a real choice and to not be just choosing between two centrist parties, the Labour is not a left-wing party anymore. And it's really frustrating to see the mainstream media report it as if it's one. And yes, so to have a choice would be great. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Ireland. And we also, our politics have been dominated by two centrist parties. But what's interesting about Ireland is that we have actually seen parties go extinct. All right, it's different because we have a system of proportional representation, which doesn't look like it's going to happen here anytime soon. But there are parties that have been significant in Ireland over the last 20 years. There was one called Democratic Left, and there was a right-wing party called Progressive Democrats, who were a junior partner in coalition governments, and they don't exist anymore. There's the Progressive Democrats who are destroyed so much they don't exist. Look, that would be much harder to happen in this country, but yeah, I think that the Tories and Labour are collapsing. I was thinking today about how Labour are banking on the fact that the election is so far away. And we know that there's been reporting about internal conversations about how, for example, Gaza won't be an issue by the time the election comes around. But there is a precedent in this country for a government that's seen its approval ratings collapse almost immediately and never recovered. And that was, I think, the John Major government and the whole scandal about the European exchange rate mechanism. I hope I got that right. And their approval rating went into the toilet and they never, ever bounced back from it. So, I think Labour banking on the election being quite far away, I don't think that's necessarily going to save them. And I do think that we're seeing a real change in this country that might last.
Yeah, I would argue that the political crises Keir Starmer's facing is worse than John Major on their hands. And I mean, I don't see how poll ratings is going to recover. And then you throw in reform into the mix, right? I mean, it's very interesting. I know that poll we cited today, it's a bit of an outlier, but I'm interested in YouGov. They got them on 15%. Like having the reform at 1 and the Green Party at 2, I think is a seismic shift from when you think about maybe when the Labour Party took over the Liberals, in the earlier 20th century.
Yeah,
I don't see how it's going to recover from that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I think Starmer's approval rating is lower than way lower than Major's was, right? And Major never recovered. And what did you say? I can't remember what you said. Yeah. Look, even the 17%. That was the point I was going to make. Look, the 17% might be too high, but 15% is still hugely significant. 15% is crazy. Who would have seen this coming? A few months ago. And I think I said earlier, again, I think that this has taken Labour by surprise. They knew that there was this threat on the right, but I don't think they expected this threat to come along from the left, right? And it leaves them in this really difficult position about how they react to that. And I think that's the other weakness that Labour have, is that they came to power with a majority, but not really a mandate, because they didn't come to the electorate and say, this is what we're going to do. They came and said, we're the adults who are going to be back in the room. I absolutely hate that phrase. And we're not the Tories. And so what's their mandate? Because they have no mandate, it means that they're on the back foot. They're just reacting all the time, right? So they've had to react to reform. And now they're having to react to the Greens. So again, politically, they're in a really, really tough spot.
Yeah, I also think this idea that we say you need to vote for this party to get these parties out, that's it's navel gazing at them. It's patronizing. I think what this polling is telling me is people are sick and tired of voting for the lesser evil. They are trying to express their real political views. Now, of course, does that mean I'm not worried that reform are surging? No, I am worried. But I do think this basically shows that the British people are saying, we're going to vote who we want to vote for now. We're sick and tired of the duopoly. And in fact, we kind of need to break the duopoly to go forward in politics. I think that's true. I do think that means we have the risk of the right and the far right emerging. But at the same time, we have the rise of the true centre-left and the radical left. I mean, the radical left I don't see is inside the Green Party. There's space for it, but the manifestos of the Greens is just social democratic stuff, right? But it's an expression of people, I think. It's really exciting. People are not voting against anything anymore, or potentially.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think it's really, really patronizing to the electorate and arrogant, right? To say, well, you have to vote for us, because if you don't vote for us, you're going to get the Tories. It's such an arrogant thing to go to the electorate with. Again, not going to them seeking a mandate. And how refreshing is it for people to be able to vote for something that they actually believe in? That's what politics should be, right? And we should have these options. And yeah, look, I hope that this happens, and I hope that we have a greater choice in this country, because God, the duopoly is terrible, and also it credits the British public with no intelligence. It's like the parties are saying implicitly that the British public doesn't actually believe in anything. Again, it's like they go to the electorate with, as the young people saying, I'm clearly not a young person, with vibes, right? And that's not good enough.
Quite right. I completely agree. And Barry, you've got the vibes, so don't worry about that.
I believe somebody once called me in comments an unk. I'm an unk.
An unk. Wow. I mean, I think it's a real positive, but I wouldn't say you're quite at that stage of unk. But whatever. Take the win, I suppose. Now, before we move on to our next story, just want to quickly remind you that we are just 5 volunteers keeping the ship going. Right. We do this around our paid jobs, but our goal is to become full-time, meaning we can increase our content, be far more ambitious, and build a sustainable left-wing alternative. Now, your help has made so much of a difference already, from equipment to rallies to interviews. Your support literally means everything. Now, we rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. Let's move on to our next story. Matt Goodwin, the right-wing political commentator, appeared on Question Time and debated his views on immigration. Goodwin has become a prominent figure in the right-wing sphere over the last couple of years, and he's now got his own show on GB News. But this was the first time in a while he stepped out of his echo chamber, with one audience member calling out his anti-migration rhetoric.
Matt, you talked about narrative and mentioned the families of victims of some horrific crimes, but a few weeks ago in our country, a Sikh woman was raped on her way to work by two white men who told her to go back to her country. What would you say to the victim of that family and the motivation behind that attack? Do white British people not also commit these violent crimes? Absolutely. And is your narrative not that these crimes are only committed by asylum seekers and refugees?
Okay.
Very brief. I'm interested in evidence. The freedom of information requests that have been submitted, because the government won't give you this data.
Okay, you're not actually answering his question. You're saying, what would you say to the family of that woman?
Misinformation, but they won't give you the information about what's going on in the country. Okay. The freedom of information requests show...
Matt, you're not answering his question.
I am. If you let me speak, Fiona,
so that Matt
the freedom of information requests show...
who was raped by two men who told her to go back to her own
the same
country.
Thing that I would say to the families of the grooming gang victims. It's horrific and they deserve justice.
So why didn't you bring it up when you brought up all the victims of crimes by asylum seekers?
Matt, I'm going to take it away.
Harriet? About narrative, and that is your narrative.
Now, look, it is true that the majority of people in this country are concerned about immigration. I mean, polls show that it's one of the top priorities for voters. This latest YouGov poll shows that immigration and the economy are the top two issues, with both frequently swapping between first and second place. However, a recent poll has shown that the concerns of immigration might almost be entirely fabricated. When asked what people's local concerns were, we see a very different picture. So only a quarter of people think that immigration is a major local concern. So despite widespread coverage of immigration, and despite politicians and political parties telling us that, it's the number one or number two issue, that seems to maybe not be the case. And people's material conditions are far more important. Only 26% of people view immigration and asylum as one of the top three issues facing their local communities. This put it seventh on the list of important local problems, with the cost of living, health, and the economy coming out as the three top responses. Crime, housing, and jobs were also seen as more important local issues for people than immigration. So, what are we looking at here? Two different kinds of polls contradicting each other, right? Well, Saima Saida of the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants said this: "It's a manufactured panic pushed by some politicians and parts of the media to distract from what actually matters to people." Do you mind? Sorry, I might have got the graphics wrong. Can you put the next graphic up? It's probably 11. Here we. Nope. Is that right? Okay, I might have missed out that one. I'll finish the quote for you, though. "Across our communities, we share the same priorities: making ends meet, accessing healthcare, decent schools, and secure homes. We need to end scapegoating and look for solutions." So look, it's hard to disagree that the media is obviously playing a huge role in anti-immigrant sentiment. Barry, what are your thoughts on this poll? Why do you think there's such a disparity between local and national concerns?
Yeah, first of all, that applause from the Question Time audience, what sweet, sweet music that was, to see people supporting that guy. And there was actually another guy on who said to Goodwin, "I'm really frustrated that you bring every single issue back to immigration." And also he got a lot of support from the audience. I think that I also find this second poll really heartening, for the reason that I think that when you go to people with policies, again, right, it all comes back to more granular policies. I think we've seen that under Corbyn, when you actually asked people who had been scaremongered about Corbyn, when you actually went to them and told them what his policies were, these policies are kind of popular once you explain them to people. And I think also if you look at, the Greens, or whether, your party manages to get its act together, I imagine that when you start campaigning and you go around and you knock on doors and you explain to people what you can do locally and what you can do materially to help them, then I think that people respond really well to that. But it's like you say, the problem is the media doesn't cover things like that in this country, and they're so easily manipulated. If politicians disingenuously or in bad faith push immigration as a major problem, media immediately gets behind that. And it's not just the right-wing media. I think a lot of the time the left-wing media jump onto this as an easy story and they cover it too. And like, I agree. I think that when you look, I agree. I think that it is a major issue for a lot of people. And I don't think that we should get complacent, and the left needs to attack that and needs to attack it directly and not placate reform, because that's never going to work. But people have been scaremongered and manipulated into feeding it's an issue. It's not a real issue in terms of an impact on their lives. I guess somebody else in the audience said that 37,000 people came over on the small boats last year, but 4.5 million children live in poverty. I think if people can keep getting those messages out there, then hopefully we can assuage people's unjustified concerns.
I completely agree. Like, the left shouldn't be complacent. It's one poll, and doesn't mean we say, people don't care about immigration. I think that'll be the wrong thing to do. But what I do think is important, it highlights something that the mainstream media and right-wing parties aren't talking about, which is, and my interpretation of this is, when you're asked about national issues, I do think there's a sense of, what do other people care about? And that feeds into the consciousness of people, right? Because when the question, I think it's more salient to say, what matters to you personally in your local area? I think that's a more important question to ask, right? It's very different. The framing of the question means it's very different, because I think when you ask the question, what's important to you locally, people then actually think, oh, what is important to me locally? Well, healthcare, potholes, wages, rent, bills, all these sorts of things, very much material, right? And actually, people don't wake up every single day thinking about immigration, despite the fact that the mainstream media talk about it, right? Despite the fact that national polling says it's the case, I don't think people wake up thinking, damn, immigrants. But people are going to be thinking about, oh, it's rent today. Oh, my water bill's gone up. I mean, mine's gone up. My mortgage, my interest on mortgages have gone up. And I think that poll accurately reflects like everyday life. But I suppose when you're asked on a national stage or on a national poll, it feels like it's not, when the people answering that, it's like, it's actually not my concern, but I think it's everyone else's concern. So therefore I'm going to say it. So in a way, do you think that even though immigration is a concern for people, when we ask the question on national policy, right, do you think that immigration is actually way overblown?
Absolutely overblown. Look, it's like that guy said in the audience last night, 37,000 people came over on the small boats, and it's nothing. It's nothing. And you're absolutely right. What people care about on a local level, where I live in my constituency, there are, what's neighborhood WhatsApp groups, right? There's like a Facebook forum, there's a Reddit forum. And when I read those things, people in my neighborhood are concerned about crime. They're concerned about that, when they walk down to Walthamstow Central Station, they might get their phone snatched. My neighbor had her phone snatched twice, right? This is something that people are concerned about. They're concerned that, and I was quite shocked about this when I moved to this country, that, to get a GP appointment, you have to run the gauntlet of everybody dialing immediately at 8 a.m. and begging for a bloody appointment. Like, I remember calling and they said, well, we can only see you if it's an emergency. And I said, it's not an emergency, but I need antibiotics. And, I don't think I can get them unless I come down and you listen to my chest, So I think it's stuff like that. It's, I can't get a doctor appointment. It's, I got my phone snatched. It's, like you say, potholes, transport. And again, that's why I think that, if you knock on doors and explain what you're doing to people, or what you're going to do for people, and also just push that into the public conversation, because I actually think that Polanski has proven in a very short space of time that, for example, he can get real issues into the conversation. People now want to confront him on the wealth tax, and I think it's a great thing that people are confronting him. When he went on the Laura Kuenssberg show, but he was interviewed by Victoria Derbyshire, which is interesting because apparently Kuenssberg didn't want to talk to him. But when he was interviewed by Victoria Derbyshire, she came with kind of receipts, right? She said, well, it didn't work in this country, it didn't work in that country. You say it's going to raise 15 billion, but in Spain it only raised 2.2 billion. And he should be put under pressure like that, because I think he can respond. And what that means is that we're actually talking about policies on a granular level. How great is that? How unusual is that?
I mean, I can definitely tell, for a lot of people, crime is one, but it's like petty crime and people's like phone snatching. Can tell local WhatsApp groups, all these things, aren't they?
Yeah, you get burgled and the police say, well, we don't have the resources to come and investigate your burglary,
exactly.
Which is kind of crazy. And again, they have the resources to arrest pensioners, protesting, but they don't have the resources to come around to my house if somebody breaks in.
gotta go for those grandma terrorists, right? Exactly. I mean, they're a threat to this nation.
Massive threat to the country.
No, about the wealth tax thing, it's really interesting because he's already won. Even if he's like, I think he answered the questions very well, but even if he were to kind of get picked apart on it, right, he's already won, because we're talking about wealth taxes in the same way in which Nigel Farage is winning on immigration, because he came up with a mad policy, which is we're going to tax indefinite leave to remain, right? Very sharply went from, we're just concerned about illegal immigration to like full-on legal migration. And that was then in the mainstream media. And then the Labour Party said, we're going to do the same thing, just not as bad. Like, it's about ideas and pushing the ideas in the narrative. Like, I think talking about wealth taxes, even if there isn't many politicians who are doing a good job on it, again, I think Zach's doing a great job on it, but even if people aren't doing a good job on it, I think ordinary people are going to be like, I've already made my mind up on wealth taxes, I want it. And I think just putting that idea in the consciousness of people, that's what matters. But very good stuff. But we're going to move on to our final story of the evening. Donald Trump continues his escalation with Venezuela as he ordered strikes against their military operations. The Trump administration has made the decision to attack military installations inside Venezuela, and strikes could come at any moment, sources with knowledge of the situation told the Miami Herald, as the US prepares to initiate the next stage of its campaign against the Soles drug cartel. The planned attacks, also reported by the Wall Street Journal, will seek to destroy military installations used by the drug trafficking organization the US says is headed by Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro and run by top members of his regime. Okay, that's what the US says. But guess who supports these strikes? That's right, the Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who recently won the Nobel Peace Prize, backs Trump. Funny that, isn't it? Right? Machado is a Trumpite figure who said she supports the privatization of Venezuela's energy and that she thinks the country should be opened up to US markets.
Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industries. Venezuela has huge resources: oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people.
I mean, like, usually CIA ops are more sort of like on the down low with their plans. Machado is openly saying she wants to carve up Venezuela's resources and give it to the Americans. I mean, she is a psyops against the Venezuelan people. Barry, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Trump wants regime change to take Venezuelan resources, but are you surprised about how open Machado is about the plan?
Machado is awful. And the Nobel Peace Prize is a load of nonsense. You know, like people often cite Kissinger, which was terrible, but there have even been awful picks in the last few years. You know, Aung San Suu Kyi, who was awarded the Peace Prize, and then when she got some power, you know, went out there and supported a genocide against the Rohingya people. We had Abiy Ahmed in Ethiopia, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and then within a year or two launched one of the most brutal wars that we've seen in modern times, in which there were genocidal acts carried out, in which there were probably a couple of 100,000 people killed, although, you know, we were not sure. And so, yeah, like they always make awful choices, but I actually think this is worse because to some extent you couldn't fully predict what would happen with the likes of Aung San Suu Kyi and Abiy Ahmed. But Machado's been out there for a while talking about how she's going to privatize the oil industry, how she's going to invite American firms in. She's pro-Trump, she's pro-Netanyahu, and she gets the Nobel Peace Prize. I think there's, you know, they often write opposition parties in countries that can be deemed authoritarian say all the right things. When we get into power, we're going to be democratic. When we get into power, we're going to respect human rights. We're going to release political prisoners. And quite often that doesn't happen. But it's crazy how open they are. But in a way, I'm kind of grateful. You know, the thing about Trump is he tells the truth. It's never been different. You know, the US has always behaved like this, but Trump just balls out, says it. You know, even I think back to his first term when Jamal Khashoggi was killed by the Saudis, you know, brutally murdered inside a Saudi embassy. A Washington Post columnist who lived in the US. I can't quite remember if he was a US citizen, but I think, or a green card holder, but I think he might have been. And Donald Trump just came out and said, well, we're not going to do anything because Saudi is a very important ally and we rely upon them for a lot of money. And I just thought, oh my God, he's saying the quiet part out loud. So in a way, I'm more surprised by Machado than him because he's been saying the quiet part out loud for a long time. I guess the question is whether saying it like this means that the US is more likely to act, or whether it's more likely to cause schisms in the Maduro administration, because I think that's partly what they're hoping for. I think they're hoping that in making these threats and in the military buildup and in attacking these boats in extrajudicial executions, that it's going to destabilize the Maduro regime. And of course, this is about regime change. It's not about drugs. I mean, you can quickly debunk what they're saying about fentanyl coming from Venezuela, for example. It doesn't come from Venezuela. It comes from Mexico across the US southern border, like 97% of it or something. And the materials to manufacture it come from China. So it's a complete lie to say that fentanyl is coming from Venezuela. Even cocaine mostly comes from Colombia. Some of it is trafficked through Venezuela, but a lot of it that's trafficked through Venezuela is actually to Europe. We know that the Pacific route is much busier for drug traffickers than the Caribbean route. So if they were trying to stop fentanyl coming into the United States, or to stop cocaine coming into the United States, attacking Venezuela is not the way to do it. So that sort of tells me it's baldly about regime change.
I mean, they can't get their narrative right because Trump was talking about how, oh yeah, fentanyl comes from Mexico, when he was trying to increase tensions between Mexico and trying to slap loads of tariffs on them. He admitted that and now changes his narrative. You're right, though, that like Trump accidentally tells the truth because I think his brain is mush. He just says it. I suppose the interesting to ponder here, though, is like, does this make regime change more or less likely when Machado just admits it? I suppose one element you could say, she's putting that on the agenda and she's actually helping the cause. And the other way you can look at it is, oh, it's actually making the US look bad. But I think everyone understands how bad the US is when it comes to foreign policy. In terms of Maduro, right? Maduro doesn't need someone to say it out loud. He knows what they're trying to do. I do want to ask you, though. I mean, look, reading the democracy index, like Venezuela's gone down in terms of its scoring. That's true. Yes, there's cases of banning opposition leaders like Machado, right? However, what I do want to say is someone like Machado doesn't care about liberal democracy, as you sort of rightly pointed out. Yes, you might say, oh, I'll be fairly elected, which is, I don't think it would happen. It would be kind of a coup anyway, right? And then she sells off the resources that belongs to the Venezuelan people to America. I mean, how is that any way democratic? It's basically authoritarianism dressed up under liberal democracy. Whereas, okay, Maduro is not practicing liberal democracy, but you can't really attack him on that when you're playing to, as some people have said, that she's kind of a traitor. They've called her a traitor.
Yeah, again, like I said, she's absolutely atrocious. And I think, I agree with you. We've seen time and time again opposition leaders say the right things and bang on about human rights in so many countries and then come in and be authoritarian themselves. And I don't think we should shy away. I'll probably be really unpopular with some people on the left for saying this, but, the Maduro regime is authoritarian, and I think that there's convincing evidence that some senior officers in the military are involved in the drug trade. I don't think it's fair to say that the country is some kind of a criminal enterprise headed by Maduro, which is, the narrative that Machado wants to push. But I agree with you. She won't come in a democratic election. Trump has already said that the CIA have been activated inside Venezuela. I mean, again, absolutely crazy when you talk about saying the quiet part out loud. Are the CIA active in Venezuela? Oh, yes.
The terminology as well, CIA activated, is almost like he's a secret left winger.
It's, right. It's absolutely insane. And, so she can talk about if I was allowed to go back to Venezuela and if Maduro was removed, I'd sweep to a democratic victory. I don't think that's, I don't know. It's up to the Venezuelan people, but I really don't think that that's true. And, they've already admitted that the CIA is in there trying to topple the government. And by the way, they've been trying to do it for a long time. It's not the first time that the US has tried to topple a Venezuelan government. And even during Trump's first term, they were applying all kinds of pressure. So I agree with you. Look, there is authoritarianism in the Maduro government, but Machado is not some innocent Democrat.
No, 100%. And I don't think it's going to be particularly popular with the people to say, elect me so I can give our oil to Donald Trump.
Right.
She can try, though. She can try.
And she comes from a long line of kind of Venezuelan elites.
Yeah.
I think she's basically an aristocrat. Right? If you look at her background and who her father was and who her grandparents were, her grandfather was also very influential. She comes from a very elite family. And we know about Venezuela, right? That before Chavez came to power, it was dominated by those elites. And a lot of people were being left behind, right? And so there is that element too, where Machado would just be a return to the status quo that did not work very well for the poorest people in Venezuela.
Barry, really, really appreciate your insights there. But let's go on to our comments. Let's bring in our producer, Sarah. Sarah Delau is with us now. How are we?
It's me. Yeah, good, thank you. Really great show, honestly. I've just been clicking my fingers in the back. So let's go to the super chats first. Thank you to Lily Cat for becoming a member and to Axe for gifting 5.
Yes, Axe. Good to see you in the chat again.
The Blazers made an appearance. Michael sent £2 and said, Blazer money.
I didn't have a Halloween costume, so I thought a blazer would do for you. I mean, you've got my face on there. Scary enough, right?
Pack it in. And then Specs said, Specs gifted 5 left membership, so thank you. And I guess we could go to, actually, I'll go to that in a sec. I do want to just talk about how much the chat's loving you, Barry. Actors like Bazza, Beth Hawk said Big Barry, Spec said Big Up Barry.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks.
Called you a legend, and a lot of them were calling you Uncle Bazza.
I shouldn't have said that.
You should have said that now. You've activated. You've activated.
Now I'm Unk again.
Yeah.
I mean, you said, Curtis, that it's a good thing. I don't know.
It is a good thing.
Is it? Is it positive?
It absolutely is. It's a term of endearment. Seb, could you turn yourself up a little bit? Is that possible?
No, I don't know. I'll have to just scream.
Be closer.
Yeah,
Scream.
I think I just have to talk into my mic. Sorry, guys. Hopefully, can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, that's definitely better.
So moving on then to this comment. Firstly, it's a £5 donation from my pal Foot.
Thank you.
And he said, Clive and Nadia should join Greens to keep their seat. I cheered the most when seeing Keir Starmer could lose his seat. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think the Greens would then be stronger if the likes of Clive and Nadia just joined the Green Party? What do you guys think?
You can take this one, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely, I don't know. Look, there are some people in the Labour Party who you wouldn't want to see lose their seats. I actually have maybe kind of a controversial take on this, though. I don't find defections very democratic. You know, so you're elected for one party and then you switch to another party. Is that democratic? You know, were you elected because of who you are, or were you elected as a sort of a combination of who you are and which party you represent? So there's a little part of me that's uncomfortable with it. But then, you know, it does seem like all the parties are competing for defections, right? There's even been defections from the Greens to your party. I think at the council level, when your party don't even have a policy platform yet, which is kind of crazy, especially when you think about the policies that Zach Polanski is outlining, that somebody would jump from Greens to your party without yet knowing what your party stands for. So there is, I think, this like really competitive thing going on where people are looking for defections. But if it strengthens the leftist option, then I can park my concerns about how democratic it is. If it strengthens the Greens, if it strengthens a leftist alternative, then okay, bring it on.
I think I have a slightly controversial opinion as well, which is basically leaping off what you said, the last thing you said, which is I don't care if there's defections and you don't have a by-election. And the reason why I say that is because first, all political parties do it. And then there's a lot of hand-wringing by saying, you should face the electorate. And no one does it. So I'm then thinking, well, I want the Greens to be on even level playing field. I don't want them doing that either, because to be honest, the most important thing I think is building power for the left. I mean, once we've changed our system to a more fairer system, maybe we can. I do note, though, that Zach Polanski has recently said that, you know, at the beginning of my leadership, and it's been short already, right? But when he was first elected, he was like quite excited at the prospect of defections. But now he's like, I don't want to be like hand-me-downs. I don't want to be basing my leadership in the party on Labour defections. I want to grow our own movement. So absolutely welcome defections. And then he said, like, it's got to go for a membership process anyway. But let's inspire new candidates. So, I mean, I it obviously can't be harmful for any Labour MP on the left who's actually half decent to join the Greens.
That's such a boss move from Polanski, isn't it?
It is a boss move, though. Yeah.
Yeah, to say, I don't need them, you know. Maybe Harriet Harman is right. Maybe he is a bit macho.
Yeah. Maybe right. The massive sexist that he is. Very incredible stuff from Harriet Harman, though. We always love her insights.
Oh, what an unbelievable, absurd attack line.
And he's not even particularly, and this is no shade at Zap, he's not particularly macho. He doesn't scream, you know, manosphere man. He just, I mean, in real life, he's a very gentle, lovely human being.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. I've been looking at brake discs, guys, as well, like trying to, my brake discs are not working in my car for some reason. Anyway, Tim Wood just says, I think Clive Lewis would jump ship if the Greens became the only party to beat reform. Clive has a lot of potential and is wasted in blue Labour. It seems that this is the general consensus at the moment. Like, despite your controversial opinions, the people, and it's not been 2 comments, it's been multiple comments in the chat that I think are kind of echoing the same sort of thing, that Clive Lewis has just wasted potential in Labour, because it came off of what you had said, Barry, that Labour is no longer a left-leaning party, and someone would kind of just off the back of that was like, Labour left's an oxymoron. It's like saying, hello, I'm a carnivorous, like vegan.
Sort of using it sarcastically, but
yeah. So I don't know. I think it seems that they want Clive Lewis to kind of go to the Greens, but who knows?
He's been pretty open that he won't ever leave, though. He said, because he's been asked that question directly, like join the Greens. He's like, I will never leave Labour, and I think that you should get over it. I know the Labour Party is something that means a lot to a lot of people, but fucking get over it. I mean, politics isn't about football teams; it's about change, and you know. If you're a Labour person who loves the aesthetics of red Labour, working class person, and don't like the aesthetics of Greens, I say get over it, because it's the policies that matter.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk about media and the impact of, I don't know what the media does in terms of the things that they report on. And I started this comment, but I can't remember what was being said between the two of you. But Jamie was asking what left-wing media is he referring to. I don't know if any left-wing media that placated reform.
Maybe I misspoke. I think because at one point I was saying that, parties, that Labour is placating reform by trying to be more like reform, right? And you can't out-reform reform. Maybe I misspoke and said media. I don't remember that bit.
Okay, so that might have been, just a slight mistake. But here, Hawksy says, how is it fair that the weight of the country is on the shoulders of the workers? They keep the country alive with the work they do and also with their taxes. And that was in relation to your first story, Curtis. And it's true, isn't it? Like, it is the working people that help sustain the life of this country. And without them, it would fall flat on its face, wouldn't it? So yes. What else? I think there was a couple more. Where is it? Axe said the Greens under Zach are exactly what the left needed. Labour was already a losing party and they know it. I just wonder what's going to happen with the two big collapsing and a new two rising. Do you see, I mean, obviously the polls are showing that the two-party system is kind of falling on its face, but do you think that's something that will sustain itself, that the Tories and Labour are actually collapsing and that these new two parties, quote unquote, well, not new, but Greens are now rising in popularity and Reform are now rising in popularity? Will that then mean that those two parties replace the existing two-party system that we have at the moment?
I'm leaving it for you, Curtis.
I was waiting for you, man. Yeah. The stage is yours.
One, I think, look, it depends on how spectacular this Labour-Tory collapse is and whether they can anyway recover before the election. I do have one slight concern, which is whether when it comes to an election, people get scared, right? And they want to just revert to the two big parties because they're scaremongered into thinking that, the Greens would never be able to run the economy, for example, which is this constant attack that the centrists throw at the Greens, where they say, well, sorry, but we're the adults and you're just you're putting forward student politics and you wouldn't know what to do and you wouldn't be able to deal with the Treasury. And I think that that can work with the electorate. So I just wonder whether people will vote the same way when it comes to the election. I hope that they do vote the way that they're expressing themselves in the opinion polls, but I think a lot of it depends on whether the duopoly, as you called it earlier, Curtis, continues to collapse, which right now it looks like it will.
I think it's quite a difficult, or it's a big decision to make, to say, I really agree with the Green Party's policies, but they've never been in government. They're going to be in charge of departments that have existed for hundreds of years. They're going to be in charge of all our data, all these things. I get it. I completely get that fear, which is the fear of the unknown. What I would say, though, is it seems when it comes to reform, voters, they are not scared because obviously all that support has completely come from the Conservatives. They're way ahead in the polls. It seems like the more progressive side might be scared.
Not even scared, despite the fact that Reform are falling on their face in several of the councils that they run. Right?
True.
We've seen the absolute farce that's going on in Kent. You know, it was like, you know, that call that they had was like that. The church, the parish thing that came out.
What did they say in it? No, you got no standing order in this.
Right. It reminded me a little bit of that. But I think you're right. I think Reform voters might be less worried about that, even though there is this clear precedent for chaos being set at the council level.
I mean, it might be that Reform voters are angrier, so they're willing to part ways, whereas the left, we have always been too, we better be careful, and in a way can be a little bit timid. Whereas that anger is very, very powerful. My worry, though, is looking at polls, right, is, look, I think it's a good chance you're going to get Reform and the Greens polling 1 and 2, right? And the issue, though, is first past the post. 1, Labour will still probably get more receipts than the Greens, even if the Greens outpoll them. And 2, the right-wing vote is kind of solidified. So you're seeing, again, I know we're 4 years out, you're seeing Reform get a huge majority, and then the second party will be like the Lib Dems on like 90. So that is a big worry where you've got that huge disparity where, you know, it will be, I think it'd be fantastic to see more seats to the left. The Greens get 50 seats. That's great because I think they're more of a long-term project, right? I don't think they're going to, you know, become the next government. But the worry is Reform getting such a big majority. But I don't want to make political predictions. Always not good to do.
This is why the first past the post system is
such a shit system, isn't it?
Oh, it's terrible. And I often talk to British friends about the system that we have in Ireland, the proportional representation system, you know, where we work the ballot, they call it, right? Where we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we try to think about how transfers will work in our constituency. And what it means is that within our parliament, the Dáil, we have much more of a plurality of parties. And so, you know, we have independent socialists in the Irish Parliament who often, you know, form an alliance within the Parliament to increase their influence. And Jesus, the first past the post system is absolutely terrible and arguably quite undemocratic, I think.
Absolutely. There are a few comments that came in actually that I just want, like just 2 final comments, 3 actually, and I just want to show. Rachel was just asking, did you see Zach and Hassan Piker's convo earlier?
I caught a bit of it, but I had to prepare for the show.
Yeah,
I left a comment in there, but didn't get a response.
No, that's fine. And then Bloody Blah sent £5, thank you, and then said the argument that Greens wouldn't be ready to lead ignores the role of the permanent state,
good point.
Which is civil servants.
Very good point.
And it is a great point. And just one last comment, and then I'm going to end it there because I'm conscious of time. Autumn says Curtis should play the next Bond. #Man of mystery.
There's me responding to that. Was also starring that myself.
Yes, you did.
Well, hey, look, it's Turn Left serves the audience and the viewers, right? That's who we're beholden to. Exactly. So, and you're.
Can I play the villain?
You can. You
might be like Blofeld.
This is it, right? Look, I'm fucking done with politics. Me and Barry are gonna go do some more fun.
No, absolutely. But that's it for the comments. Really great show, guys.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for the comments. And of course, that is all we have time for. I want to thank you. Thank our viewers, who tuned in. It's been a fantastic show. And of course, thank you to Barry for joining me tonight. Excellent analysis. I really hope this is going to be, you'll be on the show. I can't get my words out. I really hope you'll be back on the show.
I really enjoyed it. It was a total pleasure. So yeah, I'd be happy to come back.
Excellent. Also, remember, please, to like this stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time and have a fantastic weekend.